Hi everyone, this is Jay Johnson with jart.com from the Daily Texture Project, and today I thought I would take you on a little composite adventure. I love doing composites. It's a lot of fun for me to put two or more things together in one picture. It's a little difficult sometimes, especially if your lighting is not right, which we're going to talk a little bit about. Today we're going to use today's daily texture, which is called Peace Will Reign. It's got lovely purple and gray hues and some abstract brush strokes. I've got two images open on top of this texture layer that we're going to work with, or that I'm going to work with. And this is an adventure for me just as much as it is for you. I haven't pre-done this one. I'm doing this from scratch right now, and you are seeing exactly what I'm seeing as I go along. The first thing I want to talk about is taking images for a composite. I've spent a couple days at the lake recently, and I grabbed this image of a piece of driftwood by the water, and then there was this image of one of the little tree swallows. And let me see if I can move these around a little bit so you can see. It would help if I got on the right image. Alright, here's the bird, and here's the driftwood. I'm just going to pull them down so you can see the lighting. This is why I do not like to take photos in direct sunlight. Notice there's very even lighting on both of these photos. There's a little bit of light here on the bird. Obviously the light's coming from this way. It's the same way with the driftwood. The light's coming from this way, hitting the wood on this same side. And if we click both of these off, the light in the texture is right here. So I like to line up my images I'm going to use with the light. I like to look at where the light's coming from on the texture, and then the images I choose, I try to pick where the light's coming from on them and line them up that way. If the excuse me, if this side of the driftwood was facing the opposite way, in fact, let's just do that like this, you could still get away with that, but to me it's obvious the light is coming right here on this side, and I like to line that up so you can just mirror image that layer and flip it around. Same thing with the bird. Let's turn this off and look at the bird. Okay, here is the bird, and once again I'm on the wrong layer. Okay, here's the bird, and let's make him a little smaller so you can see. You can see the light is on this side, the left side, which is the same as it is with the texture. If he was this way, it wouldn't make sense, because if the bird was facing this way and the light's hitting him from here, yet your texture, the light's hitting him from hitting this direction, it's going to look weird. So you want to try to line up your light sources. Alright, so let's move my bird around a little bit, and let's get on this layer and move this up a little bit. Now what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to play, the bird looks fine on the post, but I have so many pictures of these birds on these posts, and every once in a while I just like to do something different with them. When you go to a location to take photos, if you're not in direct sunlight, or even if you are in direct sunlight and you have no choice, try to take pictures of not just your subject that you're after, but surrounding things in the area around it, just in case you might want to do a composite, which is what I did here. I was taking a lot of pictures of these tree swallows because they're nesting right now and they're very active, and there's tons of them there. The driftwood I shot just while I was waiting on something to happen with the birds. I was actually waiting on an eagle to come in, and it wasn't happening, and I'd already gathered a lot of photos of the tree swallows. And I thought, well, how many photos of tree swallows does a person need? So I stopped taking pictures, and I was just sitting around waiting and looking around, and I saw this piece of driftwood by the water. And I thought, well, I'm going to take some pictures of that driftwood. So I did. I grabbed a couple different angles of it, and I thought, I could use that to do something with later, like perhaps put a bird that's on the ground on it, or put one of these birds that's on these posts on it, because even though the birds have landed on this driftwood before, I haven't been able to capture that perfect shot, and it's really cool looking when they do. So what I'm going to try to do is put this bird on the driftwood. Now, as you notice, the post is straight across here on top, and he's sitting straight. The driftwood is angled right here. I can either turn the driftwood up to make this little section right here straight, or I can turn the bird down, which would make him facing the water, which, angle him downward. I don't like the thought of angling him downward. I could set him right in the middle right here, because that's kind of a straight spot. However, I want the bird to be more of a focal point, and if he's sitting in the middle, I think he's going to get lost. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn the bird off, turn that layer off, and I'm going to play with this driftwood. I'm going to scale it up to be a little bit larger, and I'm going to rotate it around a little bit. Now that rotating it gives me a straight spot up here, which almost matches the straight spot right there. And so I'm going to play with that. I'm going to pull this down because I want my bird to be right in here facing this light. So I'm going to pull that down like that, and I'm going to put my bird, turn him back on, and I'm going to lower the opacity of the bird layer just to make him real light and move him to see if he's going to fit right there, and he actually looks like he might just fit perfectly right there. So now that I have things a little bit lined up, I'm going to mask away some backgrounds here, revealing the texture underneath. So we're going to go over here to the masking tab. I've got my flow, which is like opacity, all the way up. I've got the brush value all the way to the left, which is going to be removing this texture here. Removing the background. I've got my brush size here. Hardness is all the way down. I like to work with a very soft brush. Just makes things a little better. So I'm just going to mask away. No, I'm not. I'm on the texture layer. We're going to get on the right layer, which is the driftwood layer, and we're going to mask away this background here. And I'm using a really big brush to get most of it masked away really quickly, and then I'll make the brush a little smaller as I get in close. And I can make that brush a little smaller now. I'm going to try to get right in here, get rid of all of that blue. And it doesn't have to be exact. I'm actually going to bring the texture over the driftwood and blend it in. I'm just trying to get as close as I can so I can see what I'm working with. And so I'm just masking that background out. And now I want to get a little closer here. I want to maintain those details, so I'm going to blow this up so I can see it. Oops. Like I said, you're riding along this journey with me today. I'm going to make that brush size smaller. So you'll see the same mistakes I see as I do them. And there's always mistakes, always. I'm just going to try to get in tight here along this edges of the driftwood. Alright, we're going to move this up. I've still got it blown up really large size so I can see and get right around here. Just trying to make sure all the blue is gone. And I'll fit this back and see what I've got. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'd like to go ahead and brush some of this some of this driftwood away to reveal some of the texture. So I'm going to come back with a big brush, but this time I'm going to lower the flow which is like opacity, down real low so it'll gently remove it and blend that driftwood right in with the texture. And I'm going to blend a lot of this away down on the bottom. You don't want it to look like it's floating. You might want to leave some of it in so it's grounded, but because the texture is darker underneath there on this, it should automatically ground it a little better. Okay, I'm going to raise that flow up just a little and just get a little faster here with this. So yeah, I do want to leave a little bit of this driftwood at the bottom shown because that just looks like it's a little odd. So we're going to go the other direction on brush value, which is like switching between black and white paint on your Photoshop and other programs. I'm just going to brush some of this back out just to show that it's there. Now I'm going to darken, I'm going to brush some of the texture right around this corner and bottom edge. Not texture. Switch my brush value back. So now we're going to mask away to reveal the texture underneath right here. Just to darken that just a little. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Brush some of this that away up there. Now, this could stand to be a little darker down here, but I may adjust that later. Right now I want to work on the bird. So we're going to go to the bird layer and we're going to turn him on and bring his opacity all the way back. And apparently I did some masking accidentally on him. And thank goodness on Topaz they have a reset button where you can click that and get rid of that mask. Okay, now I want to mask out everything around this bird, just leaving the bird. So we're going to once again put that flow all the way up, get a big brush to get as much out as possible, and I'm getting this stump out too because, or the post he's on, because we're not going to use that. We're going to use the driftwood. So I'm going to mask out as much of this as I can with one big brush, and then I'm going to make the brush smaller and go in around his edges. I don't want any of that green showing behind him. I'm going to leave a little bit of his stump he's sitting on right now so I can have a sense of where he's at sitting wise. Now we're going to blow this up so I can see it because my eyesight's not the greatest and I want to get in here really close. I'm going to lower the brush size and I'm going to go right along his head. And just like I did with this texture, with the other one, I'm going to bring some of the texture actually over him and blend. I'm going to mask away some of him to bring some of the texture into him so it won't look like he's cut out and pasted. I think that's real important when using these as backgrounds, that you actually blend the two together instead of just being real precise about going around the edge. Nothing wrong with being precise, but I think that just adds that final touch when you blend it. Okay. Now, I'm going to have to make a little bit smaller brush. I can't go too much smaller on this. Get right in here between this little wing. Now I can see already that my bird is wider than the top of the driftwood. So I got two things I can do. Make the bird smaller or make the driftwood layer bigger. So let me go back out where I can take a good look at it. I actually don't want to make him smaller. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to make the driftwood layer a little bigger by scaling it up. Now you got, and moving it around to look. You guys have in Photoshop, I believe, have a free transform. That's still not quite big enough. So we're going to make it a little bigger. And bring it down. Line him up. Now there's about the exact same size as what it needs to be. As you can see, by making this driftwood layer bigger and moving it around, I've lost what I've done down here. So we're going to mask away, lower the opacity, bring up the brush size. We're going to mask away some of this to bring the darkness of that texture right in with the driftwood. That's a lot more interesting looking piece of wood to me than the stump he was sitting on. Okay, now we're going to come in close and look at this bird and try to get things exactly as they should be. So we're going back to him. Going to bring the flow all the way up, brush size down real small. I'm going to try to get all the little bit of wood he's sitting on out of there because it doesn't look like it fits the driftwood. I'm doing that now. I'm erasing or masking away the wood he's sitting on, and it's revealing the wood of the driftwood layer underneath him. That looks pretty good. Now I've got a little bit of texture over that wing right there showing because I masked away that, so I changed my brush value, moved it over, and I'm coming back along that wing and bringing that back. And then over here, now that's bringing the green back. That's the edge of the wing. We want that. Control Z is my friend, the undo button. And I'll do this back and forth until I get it right. There. Now we're going to bring that back over and bring back some of this wing. I got a little too much taken away. I like to get it masked pretty precisely to begin with, and then after I have it pretty precise, then I'll bring the texture actually over the bird. Okay. In fact, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to lower the flow to bring that opacity down. I'm going to make a fairly good sized brush. Not too huge. I'm just going to gently tap along these edges here, bringing that texture over him a little bit by erasing or masking away him. Now see, I'm coming way too far over the feathers, but we're going to fix that. I'm going to lower the brush a little more and get that wing straightened out. Okay. And bring some of the texture over his head. Now I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to move the flow all the way to the right. Keep the brush size low. Move this. I'm sorry, it was move the brush value to the right. Move the flow up just a little. And go the opposite direction and put some of him back, which is going to, I'll have to do that a little more. There. I'm just going to bring back some of his coloring. This is just a back and forth until I get it looking exactly like I want. Oops. Control Z. Showed a little green there. I don't want any of that green showing behind him. And now we're going to get his beak a little bit. I'm going to try to get all the details of his beak sharp, because the beak and the eyes on birds are the sharpest, should be the sharpest. Now, I think I have a little too much texture right here on the driftwood showing. I erased, masked away too much of the driftwood, so we're going to go back to the driftwood layer and lower the brush size, up the flow, and I'm going to bring back some of that driftwood detail on these edges right here just to sharpen it up. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Lower the flow and just kind of gently tap, putting some of the driftwood back to keep the details there without showing the blue around it. And we're going to go all the way out and see what I'm looking like. That's looking pretty good. I'm noticing something though, and I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but this bird, this white is a little bit cooler color and tone than the piece of wood. The wood has a little warmer tone. So I'm going to go back to my bird layer, and I'm going to attempt to make an adjustment on the warmth by using Topaz Adjust. And it shows you the whole image, even if, as if you hadn't masked away anything. I'm going to click on Brilliant Warm and see what that does to his white. That's before, that's after. Let's blow it up a little so we can see. That's after, that's before, that's after. Yes, it is. Blow it up a little more. That's after, that's before. You can see the difference by warming. I'm using a filter called Brilliant Warm from the Classic Collection in Topaz Adjust. And this will warm up things by putting this kind of golden glow on it, which I kind of like. I feel like that'll tie him in better to that driftwood. So I'm going to hit OK on that. And it'll process it, and it'll take me back to my image where I've masked away. Whenever you do anything with a masked piece. Now see, that put a nice golden glow right through here, which kind of ties him in a little bit better with the driftwood. I'm not liking this part of the driftwood right here. I think I'm going to get back on that layer and bring back some of that wood. Okay, now I'm getting into the water there. I showed some of the blue, so we're going to take that back off. There. And just for fun, we're going to make a really big brush and put some texture over this. Keep paying special attention to try to keep that corner dark. You want to see that it's there, but it does need to be darker than up here. Well, that's looking pretty good. The bird looks good. There's some little black pieces. This is just nitpicking right here behind his head feathers, and I'm not sure if that's his feathers or where the light was coming through. I'm going to blow that up really big and move this around. Like right there. I think that's his feathers because he does have some black in there. He's got really pretty head feathers. They're a real iridescent teal, blue, greens and blues and blacks, and I'm liking the way this looks. So we're going to pop that back out so I can see the full view. Now what I'm going to do to tie this all in together and actually make the colors a little richer, I'm going to duplicate the texture layer and put it on top. And I'm going to start playing with layer modes. Ooh, multiply looks very nice, adds a lot of drama. Multiply is one of my favorites. Overlay adds a nice bit of light and a little more drama. And of course, soft light's one of my favorites. Hard light kind of washes out my bird. I'd have to mask that back off. If I use that layer, I'd have to mask it off the bird. Okay, let's look at soft light. And at this point, I'll set it on a layer mode and I'll turn it on and off. Now see, that's putting a nice light from the texture. It's bringing the color of the texture into his feathers right here. You can see the difference, and it's actually allowing him to pick up some of the texture as the wood. I'm liking that. That's looking very cool. But let me put it on multiply. And multiply, of course, makes him too dark. But what if I duplicate the texture layer again and move it to soft light, which adds that glow back to him. But the multiply is still too dark, so we're going to pull that down. That's all the way down with the soft light layer all the way to 100%. Let's bring the multiply up just a little bit. Now see, I like how the multiply is darkening this down here. But I don't like how it's darkening this up here. So there's a solution for that. It can be masked off. Let's set it to, when in doubt, I always like to use 50% to start with. Now the soft light is at 100%. If we bring it down and then bring it back up, you can see the change in the lighting, how it's put in the lighting right up here on this bird. Now that's actually looking pretty good. I think the bird could be, this section could be a little brighter, and the way to achieve that is either remove the multiply, but I like the multiply down here. So we're going to mask away on the multiply layer. We're going to mask some of this off. And put the flow like right in the middle, make a real big soft brush. That won't take it all off. And I'm just going to start tapping around the bird, and I like to tap rather than just do a real strong stroke. With this Wacom tablet, it's very good about that. That's putting some nice light on him right there and on this side. I'm going to take off some of that. I'm just tapping. Now let's turn all these off. That's what we started with. Put the multiply back on. Put the soft light back on. Soft light off, multiply on, and I just do this. I just play with them. And I do like the multiply and the soft light both on there. And now I've masked off some of that multiply layer, so there's still a little darkness right here I could work on. So I'm going to mask on the multiply layer. I'm going to tap some of that away and bring that light right down from this corner to where it's hitting him and the side of the wood right there. Now this is looking a little too bright right here. I think I might have masked away too much of the multiply, so we're going to go the other direction and bring that layer back on there, darkening this back side of it. Back and forth, back and forth. I'm still not happy with this right here. I think this could be a little darker. So there's a way to handle that without messing with my two layers I've just added. I'm going to click back on the driftwood layer, which is very bright. If I turn off all of these, you can see. No, you can't because I messed it away. Okay. I need to darken the bottom of the driftwood, and there's a fun way to do that with Topaz. In Topaz Lens Effects, which is one of the plugins, I click on that. There's this great little tool that I just love called Graduated Neutral Density. And of course it shows my original image before I moved it and before I did any masking. And in the Graduated Neutral Density you can play with different stop adjustments, and it'll darken certain areas. Now remember, we've got this piece turned upward straight, so what I want darkened is this right here. That's the bottom on my image because I turned it around. So this is the bottom section. I want to make sure that's darkened. That's the original. That's with an adjustment bottom half 2 stops adjustment. Bottom quarter would be a little bit less, but see that's still leaving that pretty bright. So bottom half 2 stops is really darkening this whole section. That's before, that's after I've clicked that bottom half 2 stops. And you can see that it's making this darker right there. So I'm going to hit OK. And remember, if something doesn't work right, Control Z is your friend. Now, if you might have noticed, it popped this area right here just a little bit darker. Let's undo it. And it brightened it up. Now let's redo it. And it darkened it. Still not dark enough for my liking, but it was worth a shot. Okay, there's another way to get this darkening in here. I just want this section right here a little bit darker than it is. So I'm going to go to my burn brush. I'm going to turn up the strength a little bit on burn. I've got the flow set pretty high. You can adjust the flow on this program, which is like opacity, and I'm sure you can on others with your burn brushes. You can adjust the opacity high or low. I've got it set real high in a big brush, and I'm just going to tap it in there and see if it's darkening it to my liking. It's a little better. Let's turn the strength on a little bit more and do it again. And remember, this is just darkening the driftwood layer. It's not messing with the texture layers I have on top. Or the texture on the bottom. I think the driftwood is darkened pretty good, but there's this little light spot right there. That's coming from the main texture layer, which is under the driftwood. And I think I need to darken that. So I'm going to click on that layer and go back to the burn brush. And I just want to do a little, so I'm adjusting my strength of it. And I'm going to tap right there just to darken that texture layer, which is under the driftwood. That's a little better. I think it could still be a little darker, so we're going to mess with the strength again and do it again. There. Now to me, that's looking better. It looks like the driftwood is more integrated with the texture. So let me go back up to the top. Turn these off. This is before. It really doesn't look much darker, but remember that multiply really did a lot with the darkness right there. And then when I added the soft light layer, that pumped everything up. That pumps your lighting up. Soft light really gives you a good way to play with lighting, because it's going to pump up your colors, it's going to darken your darks, and it's going to brighten your light areas, as well as bring the color of the texture into your subjects that are underneath it. And that's what it's done. When I turn this off, you can see there is light on the bird right there, but when I turn this on, the light is really on the bird right there, and it's brought that color from that texture layer right into his feathers, which I really like. So it looks to me like he's sitting on a piece of driftwood, and it's a stormy day and there's some light busting through. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to do with this, because I really like the way this looks. And because I used two images that were taken on overcast day, where the lighting, I think it was mostly overcast. There was a slight little bit of sun coming out, but it was very, very light. Because there's even lighting pretty much on both the bird and the driftwood, it was easy to composite these two together. But you have to, when you're compositing, you have to pay attention to that light, because light and shadow is what is going to make your image seem realistic. In looking at this image now, most people are not going to realize that that bird was not sitting on that piece of wood. They're going to think he was really sitting there when I took the picture. And that's what I want them to think. And because the lighting was right, and I lined up my lighting where the light's coming from on both the driftwood and the bird and the texture. It pulls it all together and it makes it blend better and it doesn't look like something's off. And the thing is, with lighting, you won't necessarily know that something's off. Like, it won't be blatantly in your face, oh, that person had their lighting wrong. But the viewer will know something isn't right. They'll sense it. So it's real important to pay attention to lighting. And it's also important, and what I said earlier, and I forget this myself all the time. I'm trying to train myself to do better. When you go out in the field and you're photographing and you're after a certain subject, while you're spending time waiting on that subject or waiting on something to happen that's different or whatever, when you're in a certain lighting, take pictures of other things that may be around that might be interesting, that you might want to merge with your subject later in a composite. Um, if the sun had came out, which the sun did come out later, and I've got these birds photographed in sunlight with strong sunlight on them. But what I didn't do during the strong sunlight is I forgot to rephotograph the driftwood or I do have one of the rocks that was by the lake that had some pretty good sunlight on it, but it's still a little bit off from the bird, and I need to remember when I'm photographing a subject in the field to also take the surrounding things, pieces of wood, pieces of rock, a branch on a tree, um, the picnic table. I'm just thinking of things that are out there at this lake where I go. The picnic table, um, boats. There's boats out there. Um, it would be really cute to have a bird sitting on the edge of the boat, and I totally did not think of that until just right now. Thank goodness I go out there quite a bit, so next time I'm going to remember to get the boats too. Um, but that's what you want to do when you're out in the field. You want to gather other images from the same area if you're interested in doing composites like this, because this way I can, instead of just publishing a bunch of work with a bird on the post that's got a flat top, if I take other interesting things like driftwood and rocks and boats, I can take those birds off that flat post like I've just done here and put them on something else to create a whole new image that doesn't look the same as everything else I've already done. Anyway, I think that um, I'm going to save this and put this image out today. I don't think I'm going to do anything else to it. I'm real happy with the way it looks right now. I think it's very interesting, um, and I'm quite tickled that I was able to give my bird another place to sit other than that same post he always sits on. I hope you guys have enjoyed this and maybe learned something, and I hope you're having a great day. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.